What up? This is the Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you for being with me again. My interview is with Padres analyst and on-field reporter Bob Scanlan. He played in the big leagues for a very long time. He had a 20-year career. He was a high school draft pick by the Phillies, ended up going to the Chicago Cubs, had a great career there. And we discuss everything San Diego Padres today, also just the historic run that they had and the trade deadline, all the stuff, all the moves that they made. So great episode with Bob Scanlan today, and I think you'll really enjoy this one. As always, you can find the show at Too Tall Sports Podcast on social media. If you're on, that's Instagram. If you're on Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. Please drop me a message if you like the show or leave a comment. You can also listen to the show on Apple Podcasts. Just search Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can find it on Spotify. You can watch the show on YouTube if you want to see the episodes as they come in live the day we release them. And please, you can email the show as well, tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the show with Bob, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back to another edition of the Too Tall Sports Podcast. I'm lucky enough to have the color analyst and on-field reporter for the San Diego Padres. He pitched in the big leagues from 1991 to 2001 for 7 different organizations, and he's a Los Angeles native and was drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies out of Harvard High School in Beverly Hills back in 1984. He is Bob Scanlan. What's up, Bob? How are you?
Brett, I'm doing great, and I love the title of your show. At 6'8", and you're at 6'7", man, we got a good front line right here.
We do, man. I definitely wanted to ask you about that at some point about basketball. I guess I could do it right now. Was that ever an interest for you? Because I played in high school as well, but did you ever play when you were younger?
I did. I played in high school, and I really didn't play at all until my freshman year of high school, and it was more for social purposes. I was new to the school, and I wanted to start meeting some people, and I was tall, so the coach was like, come on out and play. And I was awful. I was absolutely terrible. In fact, I single-handedly blew a 3-point lead for us with 40 seconds left in the game.
Oh, no.
With that being said, I kept playing, and by the end of my senior year, I was doing better. And ironically, I was actually recruited more for basketball at that time than baseball. They saw a 6'8" guy that was keeping his grades up. We can keep this guy eligible. So, but baseball was my love. That's what I always wanted to do. That was my passion, and I think it worked out okay.
I think so.
How about you? Did you have some basketball opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like I had some JCs reach out, and I had a Division II school, UC San Diego, actually. I didn't have high enough SATs for that, but I really didn't want to just play 4 years of D2 basketball and then that be it. I kind of thought like, all right, I got a chance to play baseball here. Let's see where that could go. So I made the tough call to go with baseball. But it worked out also.
Exactly.
Before we get to your career, I wanted to just ask you in general about, obviously you work for the Padres and just covering baseball in this crazy 2020 season. So what was the whole last, 6 to 8 months like been for you?
Boy, it was unprecedented in so many different ways, and unfortunate in a lot of ways, obviously, because all the work that everybody puts in to put a season together and the disappointment when that doesn't come to fruition at the beginning, and also just the fear that was going on, for humanity, really, in terms of keeping everybody safe and what was this going to mean. So on the one hand, you're frustrated about the baseball as a game, and on the other hand, you realize there's bigger global issues going on. But then it turned around, and after a lot of acrimony between both sides, they were able to come back and start playing baseball, of course. And the more I look back on it now, the more appreciative I am of everybody that was involved in the game this year to make it happen, because it wasn't easy. Both the players, ownership, everybody that was involved in baseball operations, all the trainers, all the people that went out of their way to do what needed to be done and put themselves at risk in certain cases to bring this season to life for all of us. And was it a perfect season? No. Did we miss the fans? Absolutely. I mean, that affected everybody. It affected the players, I think, a lot more than they expected. The things that we needed to do from the broadcast perspective to try to keep the broadcast interesting and make it feel like you're still at a Major League Baseball game. There was a ton of work that was put in behind the scenes by our crews and our staffs, and we're appreciative of them. But again, just looking back at the whole thing, just realizing what had to take place by so many people making this effort to bring it to life. And I think all said and done, people enjoyed it. And it was a fun season. Might there be an asterisk on it in some cases for some people? No question about it. But at the same time, I think it brought a lot of entertainment. I think it was healthy for the nation to be able to engage in that. And I'm glad that everybody made the effort to make that happen, all said and done.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was, it was great. Obviously, I'm a Dodger fan, even after my career, still a Dodger fan. So I'm happy to see that they did. We can talk about that later. But as far as again, real quick before we get to you, as far as the Padres season, were you surprised? Do you think that, or you were finally like, hey, this is what the talent should be at this point in their growth and how the team is trending? What did you see this year baseball wise?
Yeah, this was a big turning point for the Padres organization. And when this started, it was about 4 years ago when they first started this transition. And they never used the word rebuild, but everybody kind of knew what was going on. And it wasn't just on the field, it was within the organization as well. There was a turnover, there was a new general manager, there was a whole different philosophy, a whole different culture that was being brought in. And when you go through those things, as you know, Brett, people want results right away. They'll give you 2 years, maybe 3. And in the back of my mind, just looking at how it had gone for other organizations, both having been a part of those types of rebuilds and witnessed it outside, I'm thinking usually those things are 4 to 5 years where you start to see that window of opportunity actually open up. And given what happened last year where the team was well below 500 and there were some underperformances, you start getting a little concerned. But at the same time, we also knew that we weren't really at that moment where all of that, and not just going to get all that young talent, but some of the key pieces of that young talent that had been groomed and developed over the last few years were finally starting to get there. And we had some of the other big pieces brought in as well. When you bring in an Eric Hosmer and a Manny Machado, and it was starting to gel, and you could feel it, and there was a new energy. And Fernando Tatis Jr., this young kid, just is electric. I've never seen a player be able to inspire other teammates and other major league players the way this young man does, just by walking on the field. And I'm talking about veteran guys like the Manny Machados and the Eric Hosmers and the Garrett Richards and other guys that have been in the league for many, many years. Still understand and appreciate what this man can do physically, and also just the energy and the vibe that he brings to the team. So you just got the sense that, okay, we've got the pieces in place now. And then when the trade deadline came and this organization did what everybody in the industry thought would never happen, which was to be active and go out and make as many moves as they did. I think it was 25 players leaving and 25 coming in. It was some ridiculous number of turnover in terms of the number of players going in and out. But all said and done, the bottom line was that was the message that it's time. It is time to win. We've done the rebuild. Now it is time to go out there and bring a championship to San Diego. And the guys responded. Did the championship show up this year? Of course not. But at the same time, I think the message was sent to all of Major League Baseball that this is the turning point. The Padres are a team that you now have to deal with, to reckon with. And it was really interesting, Brett. I don't know if you got this impression as well or not. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased about it. I'm kind of in the mix, but
Sure.
It seemed like there were so many other fans and other players and other teams that were excited about what the Padres were doing. They just want to see this team on the field. Another example is when I would go into visiting clubhouses, they would ask me, is Tatis in the lineup today? Because they would be disappointed if he wasn't. Granted, you might lose the game because this kid might beat you, but he also might do something on the field that even as players, we've never seen that before. So it was a very exciting year. It was definitely a turning point moment for this organization. And I think everybody responded well, not only the young guys, but also the veteran guys that stepped up. And this is just the beginning of a window that I think is going to be legitimate for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think so too. And speaking of the trade deadline, I was going to ask you this a little bit later, but we might as well just talk about it now. I saw they traded you usually don't see this at the deadline for a team that's in contention, where they trade away both catchers. You go get Austin Nola from the Mariners, and you go get Clevenger. And like you were saying, the Padres aren't really a go for it team until now. And so what did you make of all the moves that were made at the trade deadline?
It was fascinating, wasn't it? And to your point, when we'll start with the catching situation, look, you and I as pitchers, we know and appreciate that relationship that you build with a catcher. And if you've never experienced that, of working with a guy and just knowing that you're on the same page and you're standing on that mound and you're locked in and you just know he's going to put down that slider right now, and he does, and he sets up on the outside corner, and you dot it and you just feel like, yeah, we did that. And the next time now it's time to go fastball in, and you're just on the same page. That's one of the things I really miss about the game, I think, when people ask me, what do you miss most about playing? And one of those things was that bond that you have with the catcher, where you guys are just almost telepathically on the same page.
You don't have to shake off very much,
right? And those relationships don't come easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just click with a guy, but a lot of times it takes time and them working with you and understanding that they're part psychologist also. It's not just a science of, it's time to put down a fastball, time to put down a slider because I read the scouting report. It's, what am I sensing out of that guy on the mound that day? Where is he? Is he starting to fatigue? Do I need to build up his courage? Is it time to back off that pitch that he had so much confidence in earlier, but I can tell as a catcher, it's not quite there anymore.
Right.
And you have that faith in that guy. So to dismantle the catching unit that the Padres had at that point, and especially Austin Hedges, who is one of the best that I've seen in a long time in terms of building those connections. And I've watched him get guys through a game that just didn't have their stuff. And it's like, wow, hey, Hedgie, great job working that guy through that fifth inning and getting out of that jam or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That being said, the Padres felt like it was time to make a change. They weren't getting everything that they needed in terms of the offense and the defense that they felt like they needed to be able to get to the next level. They brought in Austin Nola from Seattle, and I got to hand it to him. He did an amazing job of stepping right in, as did Jason Castro, who they brought in from the Angels, but the primary guy was Austin Nola. But both of those guys, it was incredible the way they were able to come in, build that rapport with the pitching staff. It was like they never missed a beat. And really seemed to be able to not only understand what those guys' weaknesses and strengths were, but also to get in the same vibe with the clubhouse, understand the bullpen. It's not easy to get on track with bullpen guys all the time. But especially in this day and age, you have to as a catcher because we're seeing bullpens more than ever. But that was sort of the start of the trades that were going on, along with going out and getting a Mike Clevenger, which a difference maker. Bringing in Mitch Moreland to be your DH at that time.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of moves, some moves that they made in the bullpen as well. Getting Trevor Rosenthal as your closer. I mean, what that guy has been through over the course of the last couple of years in terms of bringing himself back. And the point is, in the process, the Padres, AJ Preller, the general manager, will give him the credit for this, and his team, because his pro scouting team and his assistant GMs, the whole crew, they did an amazing job of not only bringing in players that were going to help them now, but also players that were going to help them in the future. Almost all of these guys, except for two, they still had control of moving down the road. Not only that, they didn't give up any of their top prospects. They did it by trading away guys that were certainly going to be difference makers in other organizations, but because this organization was so deep in talent, they were able to hang on to their top guys. The other thing that they had to do was do it by keeping payroll under control, which they did. They didn't bust the bank. But here's the key thing also. A lot of people forget this part. There was so much talent in this organization that they were not going to be able to hang on to all of it during this offseason with the Rule 5 draft. So they consolidated the talent as well into these guys at the big league level that they still have control over. So when you look at the entire package, I have to tip my cap. I thought they did an amazing job. And most of those guys performed. And hopefully they come back next year and pick up where they left off.
For sure. I think the future is definitely bright for you guys. So kudos to you. And now you get to watch winning baseball, which is nice, instead of rebuilding.
It's a little easy to report on it, okay? And I'm not going to lie to you.
No, it's true. You can tell. Like when you're in a clubhouse that just, it's dead. It's just hard to drum up good stuff, good content. But when you're winning, if everyone's in a good mood, they want to talk more. So especially for you, it's probably better when you're winning.
No question about it. No doubt.
Yeah. I want to kind of get to your career now. We talked about you being tall and being a pitcher and all that stuff. But when you were in high school, when did you really come into your own as a pitcher?
I don't know that I ever did in high school, to be honest with you,
okay.
Brett. I was arms and legs and knees all over the place, 6'7" at that time and 170 pounds, just a string bean, trying to figure it out, really. And I thought I was going to be going to Stanford. I put all my eggs into that basket, and at the last moment, they said, nope, never mind, right before the signing deadline. And they decided to go with a guy by the name of Jack McDowell, who I can't blame him because that guy was Cy Young.
Bad choice.
No, I can't. Look, it's like, I don't blame you guys. That's a good upgrade. Yeah. Anyway, I found myself sort of on the outside looking in. And I was grateful UCLA then gave me an opportunity. So I signed my letter of intent with UCLA. And around that same time, I got drafted, but I'd been telling all the scouts at the time that I was probably not going to sign because I thought I was going to go to Stanford, so don't even bother signing me. I was still in the back of my mind also thinking I might be able to catch. I was a 6'7" catcher, but obviously they were projecting me more as a pitcher at that time. But my mechanics were terrible. And there was a scout by the name of Jay Robertson with the Phillies that looked at this big, long, lanky kid and said, you know what, I think there might be something here. I think we can work with his mechanics. He's going to grow into his body a little bit. And so the Phillies ended up drafting me in the 25th round, not 25th overall, the 25th round.
Yeah.
At the time, I had a decision to make, and I felt like at that moment, the Phillies were known for developing players. They had an excellent minor league system. They were bringing guys up to the big leagues. And I thought, you know what, this is my shot. I'm with an organization that has a great reputation for developing guys. I'm going to learn the game. I'm going to learn it properly. If I don't have what it takes, that's fine. I'll go back to school and finish my degree. So that was kind of my approach. I can't say that I would recommend that for everyone. I think there's a lot of kids. I saw a lot of my teammates who were 17 years old and 18 years old coming out of high school, and they just weren't ready physically or emotionally to make that jump.
Right.
I was very fortunate. I had a great supportive Jay Robertson, my scout, was there for me. I had great coaches and everything in the minor leagues. I continued to work on my degree during the off season as that backup plan if something didn't work out. So I was able to go back to UCLA and chip away at that along the way. But I was lucky. After 7 years in the minor leagues, it took a change of organizations. I got traded from the Phillies to the Cubs.
Right.
But that was really the opportunity that I finally got to get to the big leagues, and I'm grateful for every day that I got to play in the big leagues, but really also in the minor leagues as well, because I feel like it was just an amazing experience, as you know, of pursuing that and being a part of something at the professional level, whatever level it may be. It's something to be proud of, and you get life experiences that you're not going to get in any other.
For sure. And I was going to ask you about that because, I mean, being 18 years old and you're going to rookie ball and low A and just transitioning to pro ball, and, a lot of high school kids struggle with that, just like you were talking about. They're just not mature enough. It's nothing against the kid. It's just, you're 18 playing with grown men and Latin guys, and it's a whole new world. So what was it like for you in the beginning of your minor league career?
It was overwhelming, to be honest with you, because look, we're coming out of high school. You're sort of the guy, right? I mean, everybody that gets drafted, they were the guy somewhere. Yeah. Whether it was at their high school or their JC or their college. But I remember being on a van. I was with the Phillies, reported to Florida. I'm on this van, and in the van is all these guys that were just coming out of the College World Series, and they've got their college rings on. And to your point, they're 21, they're 22 years. They're men. They're guys who have gone through it already. They've been experienced. They've made their mistakes on their college campuses, and they've survived. And now they're getting a chance to do it at the professional level. And I just thought to myself, I might have bit off more than I can chew here. I started going to the first practice and saw how talented everybody was here. And it just became a game of, okay, what do I need to do to up my game and make myself better? What's the difference? And for me, it was applying some of the things that I had to learn to survive in high school in terms of staying focused, staying dedicated, not getting distracted, learning, opening up my mind and listening to what coaches had to say, players had to say, just be a sponge as much as I possibly can, and just try to hang on. And when you get knocked down, realize that it's not the end of the world. You're going to get knocked down. It's not a question of if. And that's what I think may have destroyed as many careers as anything, is these guys that had never been challenged before. They were the all-star, the superstar at every level. And now for the first time, they're getting humbled. And a lot of guys didn't know how to handle it. Fortunately, I was humbled all the time. So I had a lot of experience coming back from those. But it was overwhelming at first, but at the same time, I look back on it and it was defining in many ways. It tested me at a young age. And again, I was fortunate and grateful that I had people around me as well, including my family and others who were there to support me and help me through those challenging times.
For sure. No, it's always good to have support and have people around you, and you mentally were able to handle that, just like you're talking about. And I saw you were with the Phillies for a while. You got up to AAA with them. You did get traded in 91, I saw, for, as you talked about, Mitch Williams, the wild thing, and you go over to the Chicago Cubs. But when you were in AAA, did you actually feel like at that point in your career you were close to the big leagues with the Phillies?
I was, until I lost 18 or 19 games in Scranton Wilkes-Barre.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got my lunch handed to me. I was a thrower basically coming out of AA, where I'd won 15 games the year before. They moved me up to AAA, and it was just a whole different caliber of player up there. And I had a lot of growing up and learning to do as one of those humbling experiences. And I think again, I've it's been so long, I forgot the exact numbers, but I remember my pitching coach coming up to me and telling me that I wasn't going to make my last start because I think I think I'd lost 19 games or something like that a year. It's just like, we can't have you emotionally losing that many games, so they're going to shut you down.
That's tough mentally, man. How did handling that?
Right, Brett? I mean, that's how bad it was. And so anyway, that was a challenge. The next year I got sent back down to AA, and things did not go much better. In fact, I remember my manager telling me basically, look, I don't know who thought you could actually pitch in the big leagues, but we don't. So you're going to be here in AA. You may get to pitch here the rest of the way. We may release you, but you're here until something else happens. So that's that good confidence builder that you need.
Thanks
right?
a lot. Yeah,
exactly. And I toughed it out through that year. I survived. At one point, they had me throwing sidearm. They thought, let's make this guy throw sidearm. I tried that. And at the end, I just said, forget it. That's not who I am. I'm going to throw it back over the top. If they release me, they release me, but I'm going to go down being who I'm supposed to be. Fortunately, I was able to survive that season. Regime change happened in the minor leagues. They brought in a new pitching coach at the AAA level, but a gentleman by the name of Jim Wright, who ended up being a pitching coach for the Colorado Rockies in the big leagues. But Jim really saved my career and turned my career around by teaching me how to use my body. He was 6'6", so he's a big, tall guy like you and I.
So he understood it. Yeah.
He understood, yeah. And he helped me get my mechanics down, and also taught me the power of this, my mind and my vision, and being able to focus the way I needed to. Nobody had ever talked to me about that before. And he gave me some exercises to just challenge me one time. I remember we were in the bullpen, and he says, okay, I want you to have the catcher get on the outside corner. I want you to hit that glove. How many times do you think you can hit that glove? I go, there's no problem. I can hit that thing 7 or 8 out of 10 times. He goes, really? Okay, let's see. And then he had the catcher bring over a cinder block, and he put the glove on top of the cinder block. And he says, okay, go ahead, knock it off that cinder block 7 or 8 times. I knocked it off twice out of 10. And it was a great eye opener for me, because I started to realize that I was so dependent on guys framing and putting the ball and bringing it back. And in my mind, I thought I was actually making pitches. And that was one of those wow moments of, oh my God, I'm really not as good as I think I am. And I have some work to do here. And, just got into the focus and getting into the mitt, and not just seeing the mitt, but actually seeing the seams within the mitt, and using my eyes, using my mind, strengthening this muscle as much as I was my physical muscles. And that year in AAA was a turning point for me. I was able to get my mechanics down. I was able to use my mind, my focus. And the next year I was in the big leagues. So I'm forever grateful for getting the opportunity to survive those previous 2 years, which were awful. Having a coach like Jim Wright coming into my life at the right time, and getting somebody giving me another opportunity to continue to pitch, because as you know, it's so fragile. There's so many things that have to happen for you to get to the big leagues, to survive the minor leagues, get past injuries, get past the politics, not being a high draft pick, having regime changes, being the right guy, but not at the right time. It's the right time, but maybe you're hurt and somebody else gets that opportunity. There's just so many things that go into it. I never take that for granted, and I'm always appreciative that I got those opportunities.
Definitely. And while you were talking, I was just thinking, because I was with 3 different organizations, so I got to see the way different organizations do it. And speaking of having people in your corner, some of the 2 of the 3 I was with, we didn't break down a lot of video, we didn't work on mechanics. It's kind of like, what do you got? And that's what we're going with. We'll just see if you can survive. Not, hey, let's mold you into some of them. One of them was too much molding, and so I thought it was a little bit robotic at one point. But I think there's a fine line between an old pitching coach who's got big league experience, who can break things down for you, or just little tweaks, versus just an ex-player who happens to be your pitching coach on the way up as you go.
Yeah, and I'm curious your experience with it, Brett, because I went through some of those things I just explained, of having to, on the one hand, you want to listen, you want to learn, you want to try things, but at the same time, at some point, you need to be your own advocate and understand what is going to be right for you, because it's your career, and there's no one else to fall back on if you feel like you compromise that in any way. And that's one of the things that I always went back on. I was like, I just don't want to have any regrets. Whatever happens, whether I pitch one day of pro ball and rookie ball, or I got a chance to pitch, thank God, for 20 years professionally, 9 years in the big leagues, whatever it was, I just didn't want to have any regrets about how I went about it. I mean, did you have similar experiences in terms of that balance of what to listen to and when to sort of be true to yourself?
Yeah, I think like, and the pitching coach is close with the pitchers, right? You don't really see the manager that much. You don't really talk to him that much. You're close with your pitching coach. So once I got a couple, like, I don't know if you know the name Lance Painter. He was a pitching coach of mine, pitched in the big leagues for a little bit. When I was in Seattle, I had him, and he was awesome. Like, didn't give you too much, but gave you just enough. Like, I like that balance, versus, when I was with the Pirates, they love like all the video breakdown. They want everyone to throw the same way, and it doesn't work for a lot of guys. So there was, and I saw the differences in the Diamondbacks when I was with them. It was kind of a little bit of both, but they kind of left you alone more or less. And also what level you're at. The higher you go, it's less about mechanical stuff. It's, hey, can you survive at this level, basically? Now you're 25, 26. Can you make it now?
Right.
So
right.
It's hard to make mechanical changes, after 25, basically, unless you really commit to it, or the organization wants to give you time to commit to it. So that's kind of what I saw, a little bit of everything during my career.
Well, not only that, but you had an interesting, you were exposed to different things than I was. So when I was coming up, there was no Rapsodo, there was no video, there was none of that. It was just basically you and a pitching coach and a catcher and the hitter. The hitter was going to let you know if your stuff is working or not, right?
Yeah.
And you had to figure out a lot of things on your own. And I've heard stories recently with some of these young guys who go to organizations where they're very analytical oriented. And make no mistake, I think there's tremendous value in a lot of that stuff. As a former mechanical engineering degree or engineering major, I'm not afraid of numbers. I like numbers. I think there's a lot to be learned from data, and it's a question of how you use it, how you apply it. And I've heard stories recently of some guys that were in organizations where the organization committed completely to analytical coaches, guys that knew how to use the Rapsodo, read video, that type of thing, but they didn't necessarily know how to teach the game. And those guys struggled. The players struggled. They felt like, okay, that's fine. You're telling me that my spin rate's not quite where it needs to be, but how do I fix that? And those organizations actually had to go back and bring in pitching coaches that they had previously fired because they knew how to teach pitching. And so I don't know if you had any of those experiences of sort of feeling like you were in an era where they're trying to figure out, okay, how much of the analytics is helpful, but how do we also apply this functionally to help guys become better pitchers?
I got out of the game right before the revolution of all crazy analytics. So 2014, my last year. So I feel like in the last 4 or 5 years, it's really taken off. So I'm more old school without the numbers. And I'm like, hey, can you get guys out or not? The hitter will tell you if your curveball is playing or not, or the hitter usually, and I tell people this all the time. Like when they ask me, what do I look for when I watch games, when I watch pitchers, I look at like foul ball recognition, basically. How is this guy reacting to your pitches? Or, is he, what's the sequence of pitches? How is he attacking? Are they just throwing or are they actually pitching? I look for all that kind of stuff. Obviously, you're at a way higher level, so I'm sure you look for that stuff too.
No, it's all the same. I love talking ball with you because we're on the same page with that. And honestly, a lot of that stuff I learned from sitting next to Greg Maddux in the dugout of the Chicago Cubs. And just what an incredible mind he had for the game. And the things you're describing are the things that he would watch. And those are that's the next level stuff of, okay, how are the hitters swinging? How did he take that pitch? He didn't even swing at that pitch, but how did he take it? What are his feet doing? What are his hands doing? How's he responding to things? So often the game is telling you what you need to know. The hitter is telling us as pitchers what we need to know. And Greg really opened my eyes to to look at that kind of stuff, even in batting practice. He would sit out there and watch batting practice. One time I said, what do you learn from Greg? It's like coach throwing 50 miles an hour. He goes, Scan, you'd be so surprised at how much guys duplicate what they do in batting practice in the game. And so he would sit there and learn beforehand. Anyway, the point is there's so much to be learned and so much that your eyes can tell you, that sometimes the analytics also can tell you that. Sometimes it can support it. But in the heat of battle, when you're trying to make those decisions, I don't think there's any substitute for being able to do that. And I get concerned sometimes when I see guys and I talk to guys that they're so into the numbers. Well, this should have happened or that should have happened. Well, my spin rate was this, or his velocity was that, or, my exit velocity was this and my launch angle, all that kind of stuff. And to your point, it's you got to see it. The game is telling you things sometimes that has a different context than just what the numbers are saying. And so I think we're still trying to figure it out. I think as an industry, and players are still trying to find that balance between what is being helpful, what is actually distracting me from what the real thing is, which is trying to win baseball games and what's going on the field.
Right. I just one more thing on that. Just while you're talking about batting practice, I was thinking, like, there's an old saying, like, there's a lot of outs in batting practice. Like, guys still get out in batting practice, like they still have bad contact or they don't react well or whatever. And it reminded me also, like, even watching the World Series, you got these guys throwing 100 now, but just because they get 2 strikes, they're going to throw a slider and it just speeds up their bat. And I'm like, you just blew it by this guy twice. He's not even close to touching your fastball. Make him prove that he can hit that first before you just give him a slider or give him something off speed. So I don't know if you've noticed that stuff too. I'm sure you do, but you got to react to the hitter.
Yeah. It gets back to watching the game, and the game will, if you're keeping your mind open and you're watching, it tells you so much stuff,
Yeah.
and it's not only at the players level, Brett, it's also at the managing level, where I think we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, times where maybe managers have stuck to the script as opposed to seeing what the game is actually telling them. And that was personally one of the reasons I felt like AJ Hinch did such an amazing job of guiding the Astros to their World Series win. I felt like he came from an organization that was the epitome of analytics. Everything that they did was analytically based. And yet here you had a manager that understood that, appreciated that, applied it for the most part. But when it came time for the game and the game was telling him something, he watched it and he applied it. And I thought that was the difference for him winning the World Series. And I think similarly, Alex Cora, the same thing with the Red Sox and how he handled his pitching staff and what the game was telling him. I had an interesting experience a couple of years ago. I was at a conference and Bam Bam Eulens was there. He was the bench coach at the time for the San Francisco Giants and Bruce Bochy. And we were talking about some of this stuff. And he goes, Scanlan, here's a story for you. My second day in the dugout next to Boch as his bench coach, all the coaches get all their notes and their stats and everything. And he's sitting there with his book in the 3rd inning and he's looking. And Boch takes it and he throws the book away and he throws it on the bench of the dugout. And he looks and he goes, watch the game. The game is going to tell you what you need to do. And it doesn't mean that you don't know those numbers, that you don't know the trends, you don't know all that stuff that's going on. Boch did all of his homework before the game, but when it came game time, his eyes were on that field. And that is, I think, the difference maker for some of the best managers. Yes, they know the numbers. Yes, they're respectful of them. Yes, they understand how to use them. They understand the trends and the advantages that they're going to be able to get. But at the same time, the best ones are watching the game because the game is explaining what the next move might need to be made, and you can't miss it.
I'm glad Dave Roberts did that this time.
I agree. I think that was one of the things he did. I mean, with Urias, right? I mean, he left him out there, and we saw a lot of movements, and we saw a lot of pitching changes and everything. But at the same time, I thought there were some moments where maybe Dave Roberts in the previous seasons might have made the move per the pregame strategy that those front offices put together. But I think he did a much better job this year of reading the situations, and I'm happy for him. He's a great guy. We had him I played against him in winter ball 20 years ago. And then to see a player in the Padres organization, as a coach in the Padres organization, I'll always have a warm spot for Dave, even though he's wearing the wrong uniform.
Well, and look, the Rays did exactly what we're talking about right now. They did the opposite, and they were, a victim of the numbers, I guess. So
I guess Snell having the one hitter wasn't enough.
Yeah, exactly. I'll never understand that decision, but it is what it is. I want to go back to your career when you finally got up to the big leagues. Just in general, what was that like? Your debut? You're playing for the Chicago Cubs, like you're playing Wrigley. Like, what was the whole experience like when you finally got to the big leagues?
Brett, after 7 years in the minor leagues and all the ups and downs, some of which I've shared with you, and there are hundreds more, believe me, of moments where I felt like maybe I needed to go home and shut it down and move on with my life. Times where the game was telling me it might be time to shut it down and move on with my life. Coaches were telling me. To finally get that moment was a dream come true. I'm not going to lie. It was truly special. And what was really unique about it as well is both my mom and dad are from Chicago. So I had a ton of family members who were Cubs fans. And so to be able to go to Chicago and be a part of that was truly something special. I'll never forget it. And again, totally grateful for that moment. I still remember the first time I walked from the clubhouse at Wrigley Field. And it's an older clubhouse, and you're walking along, and there's these steps to get up into the dugout. And as I'm climbing the steps up to my eyes, all of a sudden I just see this field of green and it was just emerald green and the green of the ivy. And I mean, it was almost like something out of the Wizard of Oz and like Technicolor for the first time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most greenest, beautiful field I've ever seen in my life. So it was truly a special moment, and it was worth all the work.
Yeah, I'm sure, definitely, especially in that city. Like what as far as the fans go and the organization, what do you remember about that part of the game?
Well, they love it. They love their team. I mean, it's two things. First of all, it's a great city, and at that time, we played a lot of day games. So you basically play a day game at beautiful Wrigley Park, and it's interesting because you see fans that are there in their bathing suits, and so you have the smell of suntan oil all through the outfield. But at the same time, you have businessmen there, and it's sort of like the understood thing in Chicago. You have a sick day, and the Cubs for a day game, and so you have guys in their suits, you have people in their bikinis, but the entire town is there to enjoy baseball and just enjoy the experience. You got the old school scoreboard up there still. You got the organ playing. I mean, it was at that time still one of the purest forms of the game. And because you play at day, you get a chance to go out at night. And you go out at night in one of the best towns in the world to go out and be a part of a sports team. So you go out and everybody knew the Cubs. Even if you were losing, you were the lovable losers. It's one of ours.
That's right.
And you'd walk into a restaurant, oh my God, Scanlan, come on. And you go down and people are, just talking to you and buying you drinks, and you're having a fun time. And so it was great. It was a wonderful experience. It's a excellent sports town that it loves its athletes. It appreciates its athletes. And I think for the most part, the guys who play there understand that, and they try to engage as well. So for me, it was a wonderful introduction to Major League Baseball.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it was awesome there. It sounds great. Chicago is a great town. So I've been there a couple times, but I know for sure when you're playing for the Cubs, you're it there. So, yeah. And of course they love their Bears too.
109 year losing streak. It's like, I always say, you know what, the losing seasons that I contributed to just made the World Series that much more special for them.
Exactly. Yeah. When they won it a couple years ago, did you feel like you were like rooting for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're part of an organization, and I have to say, in all of my experiences, except for maybe one, and I was with a lot of different organizations throughout my career, I have mostly good feelings for them.
Yeah,
I appreciated the opportunity to play, period, whether it was the big league level, the minor league level. And yeah, you just feel like you're a part of that thing. And also, as you know, when you and I were around for a number of years, you see a lot of guys up there, and so some of the players still, some of the coaches. There's people in the game that you've shared parts of your life with, and when you see that, you're happy for them as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about all the other teams you play for. So I saw you play for Milwaukee, Detroit. Milwaukee, Detroit, Kansas City, Houston, Montreal also when they were still the Expos. Of all those places, what's memorable about maybe some of those stops in your career?
Well, what was cool, look, first of all, every big league team I played for, thank you for giving me the opportunity to play in the big leagues. I think Detroit was unique for me because I was at a point in my career where I was struggling. I was having a lot of elbow problems. So from a performance standpoint, I never really felt like I was able to give what I wanted to be able to give to that organization. But it was cool to play at that ballpark because my dad's best friend, and he was part of my wedding and everything, he was a former Major League player. He had one hit in the big leagues when he was with the Angels, and it took place at that field. So to be able to go to that field and stand there right behind second base where his bloop single landed was kind of cool.
Was that the old Tiger Stadium?
It was the old Tiger Stadium, yeah, where the bullpens are just basically these pill boxes about 5 feet tall. So as you know, a 6'8" guy, I'm like doing the monkey crawl or the army crawl to try to figure out everything. But every place that I played, Montreal, same thing. People like to say some negative things about Montreal in terms of their support of the team. I always felt like they were very supportive of that team over there, even after they dismantled it and everything that had gone on in that city. But what an amazing city. The people were super nice, very supportive. I happened to be there for 9/11. That's where I was. I was with the Expos. And when that whole tragic event took place, eventually we were stuck in Miami for several days until we were allowed to fly again. We flew back to Montreal, and it brought tears in my eyes when I got there because everybody was waving American flags. The fire trucks were going up and down the street with big American flags. The amount of support that country and that city in particular showed to us as American citizens, and their support of us during that difficult time still touches me. So
wow,
that's one of my best memories about playing in Montreal. What are some of the other cities? Milwaukee. Had a great time in Milwaukee. The fans reintroduced me to what it means to have fun as a fan with their tailgate parties.
It's a big beer drinking area.
Big beer drinking. They love their bratwurst. They love their baseball, and they just like to have a good time. So obviously, great memories of being a part of that organization as well. We're Kansas City. Super nice people. I learned a lot about fountains up there because everything's flat. There's no water. So when you go to Kansas City, they got fountains everywhere. So, everywhere you go, you at least for me, I have some fond memory of something unique about the fan base, something about the city. But everywhere I went, I always felt like the bottom line is these people love baseball and they want to see winning baseball and they're supportive of their team. And that's one of the great fabrics I still think of this country is people's love for the game.
Right. And I was just going to ask you, what team of all those teams, what do you think was the best collection of talent and best team you played on in your whole career?
Well, I'll tell you, some of my Cubs teams, when I look back on those, I mean, I already mentioned, we had Greg Maddux, we had Mike Morgan, we had Paul Ossenmacher on our pitching staff. Who else did we have? Joe Girardi, who's now, big league manager, was my catcher, game in Berry Hill. I had Ryan Sandberg playing second base, Hall of Famer. Sean Dunston at shortstop. Andre Dawson was in my outfield.
Wow.
Dwight Smith, Mark Grace over at first base.
Oh yeah.
Just name after name. George Bell joined us a couple of years later. One of the best pure hitters. One of those guys they say he could just roll out of bed and hit. He literally did that. I mean, we got to spring training and everybody's there except for George. George just decided he didn't need spring training. So he showed up a week late. His golf clubs were there in his locker, but there was no sign of George. And then George showed up one day. He's like, George, good to see you. He walks up to the plate and just 2 for 2 that day, the first day of spring training. Just one of those gifted players.
Wow.
But anyway, when I look back on those teams, there was just some great baseball players and some great men, really, especially Andre Dawson. And when you were around a presence like that, a leader like he was, I had an amazing experience one day. As you know, most people know, Andre Dawson had tremendous knee problems. I mean, it was unbelievable what this man went through to get on the field each day, but nobody would know it. And I really didn't know it myself until one day I happened to get to the ballpark. I had lunch near the park. It was 12 o'clock, whatever. I said, I'll just go to the ballpark early. So I'm there 7 hours before game time. And I'm in there, and at 12:30, all of a sudden the door opens up, and in walks Andre Dawson, and we have stairs that come down into the clubhouse. And I don't think he knew I was there at first, and so I just kind of looked up, and there's a hawk, and oh wow! And it took him almost 5 minutes to get down that flight of stairs, about 7 stairs. He'd take a step, and he'd have to stop. He'd take a breath, and you could tell he was in pain, and then he would lower the next leg. And then he'd go down with the next foot, again, stop, hold himself on the rail, and then take the next step. And I just watched this excruciatingly painful trip down the stairs for this man to make. He hobbles to his locker, changed his clothes painfully, and went into the training room for the next 2 hours, got treatment on his knees so that he could compete that night.
Wow.
It was something that it struck me of just how dedicated this man was to playing the game. And as a veteran guy, a future Hall of Famer, he could have very easily come to the ballpark anytime he wanted to and would have gotten his treatment. But 2 things. First of all, he understood how much he needed to do to get himself ready. So he wanted to make sure that he had the time. But the other thing is, and he explained this to me later, I asked him, Hawk, why do you get here so early? He goes, Scan, I don't want the rest of the guys to see me like that. I don't want to dispirit them to see how painful is what I have to go through to get ready to play a game. And when he would walk on the field, you would never know that he'd had to go through that just to get on the field and to compete. So when you're around people like that inspire you in terms of their toughness and their dedication and putting the needs both physically and emotionally of others in front of their own, to be a leader for a ball club, it doesn't get much better than that.
Wow, yeah, that's really impressive. I didn't know that. Obviously, I'm a little younger, so I didn't get to watch the Hawk play, but that's pretty cool to hear. That's a great story. I wanted to ask you, kind of speaking of the Cubs a little bit, he's a bench coach now for the Cubs, Andy Green, but he coached me in the minor leagues. And of course, he coached the Padres during the quote unquote rebuild. you were there as well watching him play. And I just wanted to ask kind of, what those few years were like. And even on your end, watching, you could just tell the organization was shifting. So what was that like for you the last
Before I tell I'm curious what your experiences were with Andy, because obviously he got an opportunity to manage a big league club in a fairly quick period of time, but you saw him at the beginning of his coaching career, shortly after his playing career ended probably. So I'm curious, what were your experiences with him?
I had him in Double A, and I thought he was one of the most prepared and well-versed coaches. He could speak the game so well. He's a hard-nosed guy. He's tough, little guy, but I didn't have too much interaction as much with him. Obviously, the pitchers, like we were talking about, go with the pitching coach more often, but I thought he was great. And we had a lot of talent, and he was awesome, and he held everybody accountable, and I thought he was fair. I had a good experience with him, so that's what I wanted to ask you about him.
Yeah, no, it echoes everything that my experiences were with him as well. And again, when he joined us, he had been I think the third base coach for the Diamondbacks the season before. And when he first came over, I knew some guys, former player teammates of mine that were on his coaching staff there in Arizona. And they said, look, you're not going to see anybody any more prepared than Andy Green. And that certainly proved to be the case. He had one of the most difficult situations that I've seen a first-year manager. I mean, it's difficult enough to manage in the big leagues your first year. You're making that transition. But he inherited a team that was mostly veteran, had underperformed the year before, was dysfunctional in many ways in terms of their performance on the field and in the clubhouse. And his job was to keep that team competitive while at the same time dismantling that team, because they were starting their rebuild at that point, and try to keep everybody cohesive. While you're bringing in young guys, you're going to have a bunch of grumpy veteran guys that are on the way out.
Yeah.
And you got to keep some semblance of we're competitive out there. And he did that. I thought he managed that whole situation incredibly smoothly under any circumstances, let alone as a first-year manager. After that, it got easier for him in that he didn't have to deal with that type of transition, but maybe more difficult because now you have all young players. And really the teaching side of what he was able to do had to come to the forefront. And he spent the next 3 years teaching all of these young players. And some of them were going to be part of this organization moving forward. But as you know, in a transition period, oftentimes you're getting guys that aren't going to be there when the time to win is there.
Right.
Positional guys.
Yeah.
And it's very challenging for manager. I thought he did a great job balancing the veteran that was maybe on the downside, just filling in a spot for the rookie that's on the way, still being dedicated to that guy to try to help him maintain his career, helping the young guy to learn the game of baseball, trying to keep everybody on board and being prepared at the same time. And it was a tough ask, and I thought he did a fantastic job of it while he was here.
Yeah. That's good to hear. As far as going back to so you retire in the early 2000s. How did you know you wanted to be an announcer? Did you know you wanted to work in for a team? How did you go from playing to, over the next 20 years, you're a broadcaster?
Yeah, strange transition. So as we've kind of talked about, 7 years in the minor leagues, I finally got my opportunity to pitch in the big leagues. I got parts of 9 seasons in the big leagues. And then towards the end of my career, it turned into the up and down thing, where I was sort of that veteran insurance policy guy at the AAA level. I was 37 years old. I'd played for 20 years at that point. And I didn't realize it, but it was going to be my last season. I was in New Orleans, AAA. I was starting at the time, so I had a day off between starts. And instead of doing my chart, it was just one of those days where I was just sitting around. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I got hungry. So we were in Memphis. I went up to the press box looking for some food because there was nothing in the clubhouse. And I'm like, okay, Skipper's not going to miss me. I'm just going to run up to the press box because they usually have pretty good food up there. And sure enough, I get up there and there's a big plate of cookies. I'm like, oh yeah, scored. Awesome. So I'm just getting ready to grab a handful of cookies and dash back down to the dugout before anybody knows that I'm gone. And the door opens up from our media booth. And it's our radio guy. And Tim's there, and he goes, Scan, what are you doing up here? I go, shh, don't tell anybody. I'm just grabbing a cookie. I'm getting out of here, man. It's all good. He's like, no, come on in. Like, what are you talking about? He said, come on in. I'm up here by myself. Like, why don't you sit in for a half inning and do some analyst work with me? Like, well, it was one of those moments where you're just sort of questioning, okay, if I do this, maybe I don't want to get in trouble and be disrespectful to the organization. And, on the other hand, when else am I going to get an opportunity to do something like this? And okay, what the heck? Let me go in there. I sat down and I ended up spending 3 innings in there, having just an amazing time talking baseball. And I finally said, hey, man, I got to get back down to the dugout before Skipper knows I'm gone. So I went back down. Nobody knew the difference. But when we got back home, I had several fans come up to me and say, hey, Bob, we heard you on the radio that day, and you really sounded good. And that's when the light bulb first went off of, wow, maybe that is something that I could try. That off season, again, I thought I was going to continue to play. My 5-year-old daughter at the time said, Dad, I don't want you to play anymore. I want you to stay home. That was it.
That was that.
Yeah, that made that decision pretty easy. I'm like, all right, honey, it's time to do something else. And so I came home. I started doing some real estate stuff. I had a sporting goods business. I was looking for what the next step was going to be. And I got an opportunity to do some play-by-play for UC Irvine. They needed somebody to fill in for a few days because their basketball guy, the basketball team had gone longer. And so he was doing basketball. He was also the baseball guy, but he was covering basketball. Anyway, they needed somebody to fill for him for a little while. Like, I'll give it a shot. Why not? I'd never done play-by-play before, but how tough can it be, right?
Yeah.
So I went up and I remember doing my first play-by-play game. It was UC Irvine against Berkeley up at the beautiful campus of Cal. And I started and I was cruising along for the first 2 or 3 innings. And all of a sudden I just hit a wall where I didn't really have much more to say. And I was becoming redundant. And I said something that made one of the parents sitting in the stands, they can hear me, of course, made them mad. And so I had a UC Irvine parent come up and say, how dare you say that we've got a more senior team than them? What if we lose? You're making our boys look bad. Don't say. So I'm getting yelled at by the fans. Anyway, I walk out of that thing after 9 innings, and I have never felt so physically and mentally drained in my life, Brett. I mean, think about pitching a 9-inning ball game, how tired you are, you're just wiped out. I was just every bit as wiped out. And so I just sat there for about 10 minutes just trying to regroup and say, what the heck, what was that train that just ran over me? And after about 10 minutes, this rush of euphoria came over, and I just thought, that was awesome. I loved that. That was really cool. And so that's sort of when I became hooked on thinking, maybe this is something that I want to pursue. I went out and I got a broadcast coach that helped me to build up my chops, build up my skills. And I started asking around for opportunities. I went to the Padres TV guys and they said, you know what, Bob, we get 100 people like you, former players all the time coming up. Why don't you do this? Why don't you go up to Lake Elsinore, see if you can get some reps in over there. That's the A-ball team that's not far from here, about an hour, San Diego. And, see what happens, see what develops there. So I did that. I called up Lake Elsinore. Sean McCall, he's the play-by-play guy there. He still is. Was gracious enough to allow me to sit in with him, to do some analyst work and just see how it flows, learn it, hear him do the play-by-play, understand when it's time to say something, when it's time to back off, what's a little over the top, what's kind of, he was great, super patient and very honest in his critiquing of me. And that was my first opportunity to do some of that work. At the same time, I also got an opportunity on the radio side on the Padres post-game show on the radio. The normal host had to take a day off. They invited me to come in just for one day. They liked what they heard. They said, maybe you can do another day. The next thing you know, I was doing post-game for all the road games. So it was just sort of one thing after another sort of falling into place. And a couple of years later, a TV opportunity opened up. And that same guy that told me to go to Lake Elsinore to get some reps in said, I want to give you an opportunity here to fill in on the pregame show on our big league games because you actually went to Lake Elsinore. I can't tell you how many guys have walked into my office and think that they're just going to get handed a big league job. You actually went to the minor leagues, put in your work in. It almost never happens. You're going to get the opportunity. So the persistence and just doing the little things are what sort of opened the door for bigger things and bigger opportunities. And then it just kept snowballing. I made the most of every opportunity that was given me, big or small. Continued to look for every opportunity I could. Doing high school tournaments, practicing on my little cassette player, sitting in the high school stands. People were looking at me like, who's the weirdo doing play-by-play on a cassette player? But that's what you need to do to get the reps. And just kept building and getting opportunities to the point where I've been able to do the pregame and postgame show for the radio full time. I transitioned to pregame and postgame on the TV for the Padres. I then did the in-game radio analyst work for the Padres for several years. And now they have me on the TV side doing the the field reporting, along with backup play-by-play work and everything else. So I've gotten a chance to sit in almost every chair and do every job that can be done on a broadcast. I've enjoyed every one of them for different reasons, both on the radio and the TV side. And it's honestly, Brett, I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful that I've still been able to be a part of this game in this way and still be around the game, and not have to worry about icing my arm afterwards. So that's all good.
I have to ice your brain, but that's good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What I'd say, do you get to go on the road with the team too? Or,
Yeah. So
okay.
normally this year we didn't, but under normal
Right.
circumstances, I'm basically embedded with the team. So I travel on the team charters, stay at the team hotels. For all intents and purposes, I am a Padre employee that's on loan to Fox to be the field reporter and cover the team. So it's a lot of fun.
What do you think is like the toughest part about your job, or the hardest part?
Well, it's been different learning modes for me in different ways. So when I first stopped playing, I needed to remember that I need to give that player an opportunity for him to tell his story, not for me to tell his story for him. Just like you and I are talking about baseball, we can talk about it. But when I was doing an interview with the guy, I felt like, I know why you threw that 3-2 slider, but you tell me, but I'm going to tell you why you threw it also. Like, there's still a player in me of like, let's, but no, that's not what it's about. It's a different thing. You have to kind of step back and realize, okay, I kind of know, I think I know why, but you tell us why. I had to put myself back as the player who used to being interviewed and now be the interviewer and allow that player and build up my skills in terms of pulling out the story from him and hearing what he has to say and hearing his reasons why. But the one thing that I never wanted to forget, Brett, was how difficult this game is. And I think that becomes very easy when you're out of the game and you're looking back on your career and you follow back when I played, that type of thing. This game's hard. And the best players in the game make it look easy. And there's nothing easy about it at any level. And I never want to forget that. And so I always try to keep that perspective when I'm talking to guys, and remember, if a guy's had a bad game, to remember that feeling, what it's like to not do well. When things are going well, to remember that feeling as well, but also temper it with, you're going to get challenged again, And so just trying to be respectful of the players, remembering what they're trying to do, remembering that the game is difficult, and also trying to remember for them to tell their story. So that's sort of been my transition and the things that I continue to work on in terms of listening to what the guy's saying when you're interviewing them. So, and I'm still growing. I'm still trying to learn not only how to continue those relationships, because the players of today are different than they were. Now I'm 54 years old, so I still have to try to connect with these players on a baseball level, but understand they're from a different generation. They are getting exposed to things that I never was, in terms of the analytics, in terms of the social exposure through social media and everything else. They're much more sophisticated in all that kind of stuff than I ever was at their age. So it's I guess the point is I'm constantly learning as well along with them, so that I can best serve them and the fans in terms of bringing them the greatness of the game and what these players are accomplishing on the field.
And speaking of guys that make it look easy, I wanted to ask you about Manny Machado. Obviously he kind of was just stashed away in Baltimore, for years and just putting up crazy numbers. And, us on the West Coast didn't get to see him enough. And then he came to the Dodgers. I got to watch him a lot more. And then they decide not to commit to him, and he ends up signing a big contract with the Padres. So the talent, is overwhelming with him. But, a lot of people sometimes are a little bit down on his hustle or his lack thereof or whatever, or just the way he plays the game, or he's got kind of a fiery attitude from what it would seem. But from what you've seen all the time, every day, watching Machado, what can you tell us about the kind of player he really is?
Underrated. And I'll tell you what, getting a chance to see him on a daily basis allows me to appreciate him even more. And I think you know what I'm talking about. It's one thing when people see a player and they come into town for a few days, or you see the highlight show. But it's really when you see a guy on an everyday basis that you learn both the exceptional things that he does and maybe some of the warts that the player has as well, right? You see it more. Everything gets exposed over a longer period of time. But what I've seen out of Manny is this guy loves the game. He loves to win. And I have never seen a smoother athlete at third base than Manny Machado. It's unbelievable the plays that he makes. And I love the comparison with him and Nolan Arenado. And to be on the field with both of those players at the same time, two of the best third basemen that you're ever going to see in your lifetime, and two such completely different styles of playing, where, Arenado he's twitchy and he's over here and he's over there and he's making this throw and, he's all over the place. His athleticism and the quirkiness and it's amazing to watch. And then you watch Manny and everything is just smooth. And he just gets there and he's there and the throw is just like that and it's right on the money. I mean, the things that he does and the way that he makes them look so effortless, and yet they're not. It's such a fun style of baseball to watch. And I think sometimes it might be interpreted as almost lazy or lackadaisical because he's so dang smooth and makes it look so darn easy all the time. Right. These plays. There's nothing easy about it. This guy works really hard. He's one of the clutch players, and I know that that's a controversial thing. At least it used to be, right? There's no such thing as a clutch player. Wrong. There are guys that come through in the big key moments. He's one of those guys, and that's why I think it's so exciting now that the Padres are in this window of winning, and you could see his game step up as this team stepped up. You could see when it's the big moment against the Dodgers, and they've got their ace on the mound. It's Manny Machado that's hitting the home run. This is the guy that relishes that big moment and wants to be there for that. And you've got to have those guys on your team that aren't afraid. They're not going to back down. And I think I've seen the fire. We saw it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right? Well, him and Gratterall going at it. That's the Manny Machado that I see on a daily basis. That's the Manny Machado that I see inspiring guys. That's the Manny Machado that I see being the mentor for Fernando Tatis Jr. And the Manny Machado that we saw this year is hopefully the one that we see for the next 3 or 4 years, which is a guy that's a difference maker on both sides of the ball.
For sure. No, I appreciate that because a lot of people don't get to see that perspective. So it's good that you have that. And I did want to ask you about Tatis. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but just those two on the left side of the infield is ridiculous. But once everybody started, I was going to ask you about the Slam Diego moniker, everybody, they're embracing it. You can just feel like it's a different vibe in San Diego, but especially with Tatis, who is, off the charts ability. So I just want to get your perspective on what you see from a daily basis from Tatis Jr.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier. I've never seen a player bring to life, bring energy to a major league team the way this young kid can. And this was last year as a 20-year-old with a few weeks in the big leagues. There's just something, Brett, when he walks into the dugout, it's 20 minutes before the game and he's getting ready to head out to the outfield and they do their last minute stretching and throwing for the game. He has this energy of just the way he bounds out of the dugout and the dirt is flying off of his spikes and he is just prancing out there like a gazelle. And you could just tell this guy is just a different creature out there. And the other players know it. They look at him and they're just like, wow. This kid is something special. And not only is it, you see the physicality, and you've been around these guys also, a great athlete, amazing but the baseball acumen. You can tell this kid's from a baseball family. I actually played with his dad in Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
Senior, yeah. And he's done an amazing job raising this young man, not only from the baseball perspective, because he's such a gifted athlete and a gifted baseball player. He has an acumen and an intuition on the field that I've rarely seen out of anybody, let alone a kid this young. We've seen some of the plays that he makes, not only defensively, but tagging up from third base on a pop up to second and scoring. That type of stuff. The matrix moves when he's, getting ready to dive and his body's going, no, he's all over the place. It's like, how does a body even do that? But he is so humble. There's no arrogance about him whatsoever. He wants to get better, and the improvements that he made from last year, it blew my mind because he could have very easily just coasted and said, hey, look, I'm in the big leagues now. I'm already one of the best in the game. And he came in. Bobby Dickerson was our new infield coach this year, who was with Manny in Baltimore when Manny first came up. And that's one of the reasons the Padres brought Bobby over here. And because he's a fiery guy. He's not afraid to get in your face, and he's going to make you better. And these players responded to him. And to his credit, Fernando Tatis Jr. made himself better. The problem with him last year was the routine play. He worked on his footwork. He worked on the routine play, the simple things, and he nailed it down this year. His ability to see pitches and to adjust and to adapt. the type of things that you just don't see out of kids this young. So, and his thirst to get better, and I think he understands his place in the game also, Brett, in terms of being that inspirational guy. So he's unique. I think he's one of those guys that we could be hopefully talking about for the next decade and talking about as one of the best players that we've ever seen take the field.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with you. I think his ability is really unbelievable. So it's good. It's cool for you to get to watch those two every day, you know?
Oh, the left side of that infield's crazy. And what's fun is watching those two guys challenge each other. You know, Manny will make a play and he'll kind of look over at Fernando like, yeah, how about that one, kid? And Tatis does the same thing back, diving play up the middle and throws it 98 over to first base, and he kind of gives the link over to Manny. So it's fun.
That is great. And last question for you, just in general, do you think this Padres team, seeing, obviously we don't know what next season's going to be like, when it'll start, all that stuff, but as far as talent-wise, you think this team now has what it takes to win a World Series?
Oh, no doubt about it. And it's just a shame that they were missing their two top pitchers heading into the postseason this year, with Clevenger, who we talked about, injured his elbow, and Dinelson Lamet, the same thing, the final outing before the start of the postseason. So they were without their top two guys who are absolutely dominant through most of the season. So we'll never know what this season could have been. They still did an amazing job of battling with their bullpen and keeping in those games. But you get those two guys back. Chris Paddock had a learning season this year, the sophomore season. Hopefully he comes back and is as strong as he was and better than he was, as a rookie. And Zach Davies did an amazing job. They need to figure out the back end of the bullpen, who's going to be the closer. But other than that, a bunch of big arms in that bullpen as well. And the infield, for the first time since I've been covering the team, there's really nothing to do. I mean, they're set.
Yeah.
Your infield is set. Your catching position that we talked about earlier is set. Your outfield with Grisham and Myers and Pham did a fantastic job. Will Myers had an amazing bounce-back season. So there's really nothing you have to do. If there's an opportunity that you think is an upgrade, they can do it. But basically, they're set, and this team showed that it can win last year. So I don't think there's any question in my mind that they're going to be a team to be reckoned with in the National League for sure, health permitting.
I totally agree. They're definitely scary. So we'll see what happens to the Padres next year. I'm done with the questions. Thank you very much for joining today. I appreciate it. It was great to get your perspective, and thank you for all the stories and whatnot. It was really cool.
Hey, Brett, thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate it, and always fun talking ball with a former pitcher as well. So thanks, man. I appreciate the time. Keep up the great work.
For sure. I'll have to have you on again later on, maybe next year when we get closer to baseball.
Look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Big thank you to Bob Scanlan. That was a great episode. I hope you guys really got something out of that, and it really ins and outs of pitching and the way you're supposed to, the way we watch the game, as they say, on the inside. So I hope you really loved that. And he gave a lot of great stories, great insight to his career and just baseball in general. So if you guys, I hope you really appreciated that episode. As always, you can follow the show on Instagram at Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Too Tall Sports. Please email the show if you would like to get in touch with me at tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. I have a Facebook group. You can find me pretty much anywhere. So, and available on all platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, take an extra second, drop me a 5-star if you can do that. If you scroll down and find those stars, hit me with a 5-star. That'd be great. And if you would like to leave a review, that'd be awesome too. And please subscribe, as always, to the show wherever you can. And have a great day.